Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Practical Psychic Podcast, where I discuss all things psychic development, being a psychic, teaching you how to grow your own abilities. And today I have a very special guest again with me. Karen is back. Karen Fox was on the podcast before in a previous episode. We did kind of like an introduction to her in that last one. So if you want to get to know her and her story, and how I met her and the whole Aspen program that I went to, that she founded, definitely check out that episode first. But we wanted to come back to get more into it. We were having so much fun talking last time, and there were so many things we couldn't fit into that episode. So many things we can't even fit into today's episode that I think we're going to come back to. But yeah, I want to thank Karen for coming back. Like, the first time I reached out to you, I was like, I don't even know if she's going to be willing. And I was so scared, and I put it off for so long. And then I finally just asked you. And so to have you back a second time is so exciting. And I want to say too that like that podcast, you guys loved it. I got so many messages, so many direct messages of you guys being so thankful, so excited to hear what Karen had to say. I also, right after our last podcast, I went on to the Lights Out podcast, and they even featured it in their video. They showed like a little video of it, or not a video, but like a clip of it. So I think a lot of you came over from the Lights Out pod and just loved it. So I wanted to just thank everyone for tuning in for that first time, and we're back. We're here today. We're going to focus more on like how to really grow your abilities and become a professional psychic, if that's something you're interested in. I want to say we're probably going to do like a neurodiversity podcast, probably another one about kids. I don't know what order. We haven't quite planned. All I know is we had too much and we started separating it out into other episodes. So if you had questions around that, I do have them saved. We just might not get to that today. And I know the neurodiversity is such a huge topic. We will come back to that. But yeah, I'm going to shut up and let Karen say hi again. Let us know if she's got any classes, resources, anything you have, Karen, that you want to share with everyone before we jump into everything.
Well, I want to say hi and thank you so much for watching the last podcast. I absolutely enjoyed, you probably can tell, so much talking to Lauren. It was such a real pleasure that you invited me. And gosh, of course, I'd say yes, Lauren. And I want to say something, when people came to the Aspen program for psychic development, most of the people didn't want to be professional psychics. And if I recall, Lauren, I don't think you had those plans.
Nope.
Yeah,
Nope.
But it's fast. But, because if you put yourself in challenging situations, like if you took the spirit medium certificate, you had to do gallery readings. Even if you never wanted to be a professional spirit medium, when you put yourself in these challenging situations, you grow. And even if all you can do is use it for yourself, which is perfectly fine, it does help. Even people who had the psychic certificate had to do psychic fairs, because it's like you grow an ability when you have to be in a noisy room and do readings. So even if you're watching this podcast, you're thinking, well, I don't really want to be a professional, I'm telling you can still pick up some real important things that can help you develop your abilities for yourself. So let me just say thanks again, Lauren, for inviting me.
Of course, yeah. And I totally agree. And I know this is making the argument the other way, but I had one of my students come to me and she said, I finally did not a gallery reading, like a psychic fair. And she's like, you're so right. It's so different than reading online. And I'm so glad I did it. It stretched my abilities so well. But yeah, to your point, a lot of the stuff we're going to cover, even if you're not a professional, it is kind of furthering our conversation around things you might experience just as you're growing your intuition. So it might be something you want to like talk about. Like I'll say we're going to definitely go into premonitions, getting readings for a long time. I don't want to give too much away, but also like reading the collective. So hopefully we're going to get into it. I'm so excited. It's 11:11 right now. I just looked at the clock.
Oh.
So I take that as a sign of like spirits with us.
Yeah, confirmation.
Essentially. Confirmation, yeah. Awesome. So Karen, the first discussion I want to jump into is like you've been around for a while, and I was curious how long you've been reading, just again as a refresher, but also how long you've been receiving readings.
Well, I've been getting readings a whole lot longer than I've been giving them. It's been about 25 years I've been doing readings. I started in 1990. I wasn't charging. I just wanted to develop the ability. And I did charge for medical intuitive work because I was doing some hands-on work. And then I went off to graduate school and a bunch of other stuff. And I started up again about 2006. So it's about 25 years. But I've been getting readings. I was talking to two of my sisters to figure out, so when was that first psychic that we saw? Because it was a family member who told me about it. And I think it was in the late 70s. So it's been 45, 50 years that I've been getting readings. And in the 1980s, I was a member of an Edgar Cayce study group that was formed. I mean, Edgar Cayce, if you don't know him, Google him, Cayce. And he was psychic. He was a channel. I'm not sure their organization calls him a channel. Actually, I don't think they do, but he clearly was stood off on his own.
Yeah.
He died in 1945. Anyway, a group of people came to him and said, we want to learn to do what you do, because he said you could be psychic. And he created this group. So, the group was anything then about developing psychic abilities. He wanted you to develop your inner self. I mean, the first chapter was on cooperation. So, but what we did back then, because in the 1980s, there was no computer to find psychics. People would find a psychic that was a member of the group, and then someone else would go, and sometimes the whole group would end up going individually. One time we went to a channeler, the whole group did, individually and then as a group. She read the group is what I mean. So in the 1980s, I spent a lot of time going to different kinds of psychics, tarot readers, palm readers. Actually, if you're in Colorado, at Goddess Isis Books and Gifts, the owner used to teach a palm reading.
Really?
Did a lot of different kinds of things. And I tell students, if you want to be a professional psychic, get a lot of different readings from a lot of different types of psychics, because you will learn about psychic readings and sometimes find, oh, I want to add that to my reading. Maybe they do an opening that you like, so you do something similar to it. But the first reading I got was way outside of Washington, D.C. I grew up in Alexandria, Virginia. And she was referred to be my sister, who worked for a lawyer in Washington, D.C., who then became a judge. I'm sure he's retired now. And I just want you to know that people from all walks of life go and get readings.
Yeah.
And he would, before he did any major decisions, he would go see the psychic.
Wow.
And she was really, really probably the best psychic I've ever been to. And so I learned how to do my own readings, not by talking to her because she didn't mentor people, but just by watching how she did her readings. So yeah, over the years, I've had a lot of readings. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I don't know if I mentioned it in the last podcast, but my first one was with a reader at the Colorado Renaissance Festival.
Okay,
not shortly
cool.
before I met you, but yeah. Obviously, I haven't been around as many psychics as you have over the years, but I so agree. Like, it's helpful to see how other people do it, and I'll often still get readings today and be like, oh my gosh, that was such a good idea that they did that. I should, remember to do that myself. They also serve as good reminders when you realize you've been lazy about something. That's too cool. And like, how have you seen our industry change in that time? I know that's kind of a loaded question.
It's a long time to get readings, and it did change. I mean, when I first got readings, I'd say throughout most of the 1980s, you went to a psychic, they basically told you your future. And the psychic I'm talking about, the lawyer used to go to, I remember one time in the early 80s, she said, you're moving in 2 months. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I didn't say that to her because I was being polite. And she said, you're going to be heavily involved in computers. And I'm like, no, I'm not. Because I had already had some experience. I worked for Department of Defense, and I'd had some experiences back in the day before what we have today. You had to type in code, and then you typed in your line, and when you hit the return key, there was no mouse. There was no way to get back up on that line and fix anything. You had to know. I was not a computer programmer. They just asked me to do some input. I was low graded at that point. And I just like, no, I'm not going to be involved in computers. And then a few years after that, she said, I see you living in Florida. Well, I had a friend who lived in Cocoa Beach on the east coast of Florida, and I said, I'm not ever going to live in Florida because it's flat, it's hot, it's humid. I was born in the Blue Ridge Mountains. I'm not going to go to Florida. I didn't tell her that either because I'm too polite.
Yeah.
Well, I will tell you, 2 months after she gave that reading, I moved because the person who owned my condo wanted to sell it. I was heavily involved in computers at the end of the 1980s. I put an office automation system in the Department of Defense agency I worked for that was across the country. I didn't do the technical end. We had people to do that, but I'm like, oh my God, she was right. And I will tell you, in 1992, an astrologer also told me, like in 1987, that I would leave the federal government in 1992, and I did it. And I moved to Florida. And I lived in Sarasota, Florida. And this psychic had said, you just have to go to Florida. It's going to be a turning point in your life. This is one thing I learned by going to a psychic, even back then. This is a long time ago.
Yeah.
I told her I didn't think I would live in Florida, and I told her why. And this is what she did, and this is what every psychic should do, professional or otherwise. She went right back into the energy of what she got. I could feel her doing that. And she took a moment, and you could feel her examining what she had just told me. And she came back and said, I'm sorry, I see you there 1 month, not just 1 month, not just 2 months, 3 months. You have to go. And I will tell you, I do not tell people with that kind of firmness, because I think it's people's lives. But she was so certain that it was an important part of my life that she pushed it. And it was just by circumstance, probably, I don't know, 6, 7 years after she told me. And I moved to Sarasota, Florida, and lived there for 3 years. My son's still down there. So, and
that's
so
crazy.
That's what they did back in the 80s. And then long about the end, and now there were spirit mediums who talked about the people who passed over, but I remember getting a reading in Annapolis, Maryland in 90, 91, and she even introduced herself as kind of a counseling psychic. And I think I began to see that as a turning point, early 90s, where many psychics were doing more of a, let me help you with your life, which isn't bad. But there was this whole segment that was really about reading the future. And if they were reading my job, it was really, let me tell you what's happening next in your job, not how to handle your job. And I don't know why that shift happened. I will tell you, I went to see this really old woman. You have to remember, I was, 30-something. So old she could have been 60. And, of course, I'm older than that. So she was a spiritualist, spirit medium. And you talked about the Fox sisters in one of your podcasts. And if you haven't seen that, go check it out. They're different. People from the spiritualist tradition are different, which it rose up in the 19th century, early 20th century. And she was just different. I don't know how to explain it. I don't remember everything she said, but the energy in the room was different. There was really a sense you were touching something sacred. And I don't think I've been to spiritualist spirit mediums after that, not like her. She was from the old school. She's probably gone. But I saw that shift in the early 90s where people were doing more like, let me help you with your life. And it seems to be more like that now, in my opinion. Now, I'm not saying I haven't gotten readings all over the world, but that was my experience.
Yeah. I mean, I have obviously very limited knowledge because I wasn't even seeking psychics before I basically found the Aspen program. But I can see how it was more future thinking, and I'm trying to, there had to have been something going on in the 90s that like the only thing that comes to mind is just like, I feel like there was like a second wave of kind of women's empowerment. I don't know.
Well,
I'd have to, like, look,
it was the 1980s. And you have to remember, the people I was seeing, they're from a different, even though I saw someone in 1985, they were doing readings 20 years before that.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and then if you remember, no, you don't remember because you're too young. In the 1980s was the rise of Oprah Winfrey, the talk show, talking about your feelings, talking about experiences that were oppressive or whatever, and let's go look at what we can do about it. And I wonder if you might be right that there was a kind of shift towards focusing on your own personal growth. And so psychics went along with that. I don't know. I mean, this is just my opinion. I'd love to hear from the people viewing this if they would post something about particularly if they're older, what their experiences have been with getting psychic readings.
Absolutely. I'm sure there's
Yeah.
a lot of little things that kind of fed into that.
Yeah.
And like even just thinking about like when I started in 2014 versus where I am now, like obviously the internet was around, but
Yeah.
less people were offering psychic services
Hmm.
online back then. And I
Oh
was
yeah.
kind of one of the first, no, I shouldn't say one of the first, but sort of one of the first to jump in a more social media way.
Hmm.
And so now psychics use social media, at least from my
Hmm.
perspective, pretty heavily.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
the downside of that though is everyone's a psychic.
Yeah.
Everyone
Yeah.
like I know we always say everyone is literally psychic, but at the
No,
same
they are.
time it's yeah,
Yeah.
it's very hard to know who has experience and who's
Hmm.
actually learned versus who just decided to make an account yesterday and start offering, readings.
Yeah.
Which again, there's like it's not like you're
Yeah.
not allowed to, but
Yeah.
the proliferation, how easy it is to get your stuff out there now has
Hmm.
made it so that it's very hard to discern between people who've been practicing for a while and people who have not. And I from my perspective, I don't want to get on my pedestal about this, but I've just seen a lot of negative in online because of that. A lot of people who are not practiced, not learned. I mean, just this last like election cycle, everyone making predictions about, who's gonna,
Yeah.
be president and all
Yeah.
these things going on. It's been
See,
very messy.
I can't do that. I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area. I'm too biased. I cannot read something that I'm so biased about. But let me
Yes.
tell you, back in the 1980s, of course, we didn't have the internet. You did it by word of mouth. And I would suggest you still look at word of mouth because, we used to view people who put their shingle out because you can go right now down the street. I think when it was sort of an upper Wadsworth. I was we used to think that if you had put your shingle out, that you weren't really legitimately psychic. Now that probably wasn't true, but you can still go down the road. I remember somebody gifting me a psychic reading from someone on the side of the road, said palm reader on the sign. She was in Wadsworth, not as far as Westminster, but we're talking Colorado now, so let me just say I used to live there. And it was interesting, but we had the view that the only way you got legitimate psychics, this is in the 1980s, the only way you got legitimate psychics was by word of mouth. And that's how they got booked. Nowadays there's so many people out there doing readings. I'm sometimes maybe booked 2 weeks in advance, but then I don't book people the way I used to. But I'm with you. There's so much out there that how do you get seen?
Yeah. It's a
How
very
do you know?
saturated market, and it makes me wonder how those still doing it very much like word of mouth, in person, going to stores, like if that's successful for them or not. Because there's a place on Hampton, and it's somebody's home. It's like Hampton and 25. If you go a little bit west, there's a house, and it's psychic sign, and it's been there ever since I've lived here. And
Really?
I've always wanted
Wow.
to just stop and walk in.
Oh, you
One of these
should.
days, I'm gonna do it. I
Bring
am.
a friend. Bring a friend. Since you don't know about them,
Yeah.
because it's another one of those life experiences.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that, and the only other close experience I have to that is obviously going to the big the fairs,
Fairs,
where
yeah.
there's a ton of people lined up around, and you stop and you get a reading then, and you can. That's kind of nice because you can feel
That's
out
cool.
people's energy as well.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think that's so interesting about how back then you were more legitimate if you had a shingle up. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, isn't it bizarre? And the woman I told you about who I think is the best, she never called herself a psychic. Now, part of that had to do with county codes and that kind of thing. And she was out in the middle of nowhere. She called herself an advisor.
Yeah. Yep.
So, yeah.
They have to do that still to this
Yeah.
day, I know, because
I
I
know.
just did a video about psychic advisors,
Mhm.
and it's all the online
coaches.
groups. Yeah, that's like you can call them. It's $2 a minute or whatever, but they're not psychics or psychic advisors. So I think they kind of have to legally
Yeah.
get around that.
Yeah.
I feel like I could go on a whole tangent about this, but like
Yeah, I know.
I used to not be able to accept payments because I would register my business as a psychic, and
Oh.
that financial company put it in a prohibited
Oh,
list
yeah,
of
yeah,
businesses, and
yeah,
so you have to like kind of be a little crafty with how you word things,
yeah.
unfortunately. But one of our Patreon members actually asked me to ask you, you know, you kind of made the choice, it seems, to be a little bit more private with your services. Like you clearly didn't set up any sort of physical shop. That doesn't seem like you. And they were curious how you came to that decision to be a little bit
Yeah.
more private.
Well, first, it's easier to do that if you live in the Front Range of Colorado, because they're far more open than where I live.
Yeah.
But I tell you, it happened around something specific. It happened around several public takedowns of fraudulent psychic spirit mediums. And I don't know if you remember this. I think the woman was in Lyons, Colorado. She was a spirit medium, and she told her client, "Your money isn't safe. Let me hold it." It's a scam.
Oh, yeah.
It's a long time ago,
I think I have heard of it.
and she stole his money.
Yeah.
And then there were a few other things, and I'm like, oh, I just don't fit in this world. But it was more because I was taking care of my parents. You know, I came home in 2015, about 8, 9 months after I got here. Mom got sicker, so I couldn't teach anymore, even here. And it just, you know, I was fine with my level of client base. And so I didn't put it up on my website. It used to be on my website, and then I just didn't. And I was a little concerned. But, you know, I mean, I've probably had 25 new clients this year.
Yeah.
They find a way to you. You know, it's my feeling, and I'm readjusting anyway, because my father, who's still living, just moved in with one of my sisters, because after 9 years, I'm like, okay, I've had enough. And I'm trying to regroup and figure out, well, who am I now? But I'll probably put it back up on the website. But it's kind of amazing. You put the right energy out. Like about a month before Mom died, I had tons of clients, more than usual. And then she dies, and she was not lingering. She died within a few hours. We knew she was going to go very quickly.
Okay.
And she lived a full life, wonderful life. And I had only probably 2 or 3 clients booked. And that month, because, you know, there are all these things you have to do to, after I mean, I was alone. I have 3 sisters. I was getting help. But, you know, I couldn't have seen people. And so they weren't coming anyway. I'm telling you, if my energy isn't in the right place, I don't get clients. If I need a vacation, I better take one, because the clients will make me take one. They won't come. It's just weird.
No, that's so true.
It's just weird.
No, that's 100% true.
Yeah. They'll come.
I can't think of specific instances, but that's also happened to me. And, you know, the reason why I've asked that too, even though that was from a Patreon member, like I've been struggling even just lately too. You know, I've been doing this now 10 years. Oh, and like I wanted to show you too. Oh, dang it. I don't know if you could see it. I got a tattoo to commemorate it.
Oh, how cool.
Dang it.
Is that the whole long one? Or a piece?
There we go.
Oh my God, look
So
at that.
it's like tarot card, crystal ball, the moon.
Oh, that's so cool.
Thank you. I needed to
That's neat.
commemorate
That's
it in
really
a way.
neat. Well, you did.
Yeah, it's such a huge part of my life, and I've got other tattoos, and it seems like once every decade I get one. But anyways, but of course, the minute I get it, I'm like, do I want to be psychic? Do I still want to do this? And like lately, I've been struggling with just like, it's such an industry where your morality, your legitimacy, your personhood is always being in question. And I never had that in film. In film, I would be respected. I got awards. My family would show up to things. And then with this, it's almost like, oh, you do that, you're automatically in this box.
Yeah,
exactly.
There's something like you're not serious. Maybe you're a fraudster.
Exactly.
And if I recall, your Patreon member asked if the reason I wasn't publicizing was because of the PhD. And what's fascinating is that, you know, for a while I used to, in my signature block when I would communicate with people about my readings, I'd put Karen Fox PhD, because I did an awful lot to earn that. But I realized, and also I wanted, if you remember, the first tagline of the Aspen program for psychic development was taking the woo-woo out of psychic development. There are people who told me that's the reason they came to the program, because they didn't want to do the woo-woo. And I didn't want to do the woo-woo. I wanted to teach skills and techniques and not beliefs.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is the people who were academics who knew me in that world frowned upon the psychic thing. But I will tell you, even the people who I knew who were totally into metaphysics and psychics and all that, they look at you have a PhD, what's wrong with you? Everybody had an opinion. So it's in my about page, but it's not all of who I am anyway. So it just sort of, I just don't advertise it. I'm really glad I did it. I used my ability when I did research because I couldn't help it. You know, things would come to me, even what questions to ask people who I interviewed. Everybody uses it. They use it all the time. We just don't talk about it. And I want to see the day come where we stop making fun of what you and I do, where we stop thinking less of it. There are cheats and scammers in every profession. And yes, they are in our profession, but we are professionals, and what we do really helps people. I just, it really bothers me, and I keep thinking it'll change. You know, I told you before we went on that I collect books that are older, like in the 20s and the 30s and the 40s and the 50s.
Yeah.
And all along they have said, okay, they've come to this conclusion that the world now accepts what we do. Yeah. And we're going to now see everybody doing that, and it never happens. I don't know why. It just doesn't happen.
I know. I remember you saying that in the last podcast. You kind of briefly touched on that. And I remember walking away and being like, no, it's people accept it. And then, of course, like, then I'm like having this crisis of faith. And I'm like, I think part of my goal is to really help change those stereotypes and use this and, you know, kind of demystify it. But then seeing all these bad eggs, all these psychics, you know, going and making predictions and making the rest of us look bad. And, you know, just a combination of a lot of stuff was going on in my life. And I'm just like, I'm not quite there anymore, but I was like, do I just always want to be, you know, questioned? And it's hard being a psychic because it just comes with that extra, I don't know, tough skin you have to have.
I'm so glad you're doing it, Lauren, because you're from a generation that knows about social media. You and your husband, you're documentary filmmakers. You know about how to engage the mainstream in a way I don't even know. And, you know, after spending 9 years taking care of my parents, who are mostly dad, you know, I'm trying to just find my feet. And I think that you are good at what you do, you have ethics, and you know how to market it in a way that it isn't crazy. And I think please don't leave. We need people like
I'm
you.
not going to.
You know, but I will tell you, I went through it. I mean, I went through a period of time where I'm like, I'd come home after, I remember a day of readings at Isis Books. It was probably in 2010, maybe 9, something like that. Okay. And I had the whole day, I had done crap readings, and I don't charge. If it's crap, I don't do. The very last one was really good, but it didn't make the difference. I'm looking at all those other ones. And I went home talking to people, and I said, I just don't know that I should do this anymore. And something told me to go look at my astrological portrait. I see you do astrology now. That's really cool. And there is some big thing going on with Scorpio. My father's a Scorpio, you know, Scorpio sting. And there's always been some competition. You know, he did his graduate coursework but never got the PhD, and I did, and that, you know, you're not supposed to go past not him anyway.
I see.
And I just realized, no, there is sometimes something in the stars that impact us. And I had to learn from that experience that, I mean, I always know there are going to be people I can't read. I mean, it just happens. Yeah. But that day was horrid.
Yeah.
But the good thing about talking, I debrief with people, not as a group, but I had 3 people, and I would not talk to all of them all the time. It's really helpful if you want to be a professional to have another professional psychic that you can debrief with, and then some other people. If you make it your family, you'll burn them out. They'll get tired of it. Yeah. But when you're feeling really low, they will remind you of the person who said this, and this about you, that you really are helping people. And that's the thing. If you're really helping people, keep doing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Despite what they think of us.
No, that's such a good reminder. And I think, you know, I'm going to shameless self-plug here for those listening. That's why I have Patreon as well. Patreon is a monthly subscription. You can join us. We have once a month we get together and we just practice reading each other. It's also a place to vent And so even this week, we all had a
Yeah.
meeting together and we talked about like readings that we were struggling through. And it's so helpful to have that community. So if you
It
don't
really
have
is.
that, I just want to let you know there's an online option with us over there on Patreon.
Oh, that's wonderful. Because if you're going
Yeah.
to be a professional, the way to do it long term is to have a group like that. It's wonderful you're doing that.
Yeah. I mean, and they were the ones that helped me through this too. I was, was like, I'm struggling with this, you guys, and I was just honest, and they were like, Lauren, have confidence, like, and they helped pull me out of it a little bit. So,
And can I
anyways.
also say that
Yeah.
the confidence and the questioning is what sane people do. It's what healthy people do. They question themselves and then they do things to try to improve. If you're arrogant enough to think that you're perfect and you're a wonderful psychic, then I'm going to suggest that maybe you're not, or that long term you will not be able to do it because you'll get so drained by it, people who think I know everything. And I've had students who are like that, and I've seen professionals like that, and I've learned over the years that they can't do this work long term if they are taking over the responsibility of their clients' lives. It's not my job to take care of my clients. I am someone to give information. But if I come on like I'm the know-it-all, like it's all coming from God or something, so you have to listen to what I say, I've just taken responsibility for those people's lives, and that's not healthy.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah.
also, I don't like being around arrogant people, so
Who does?
it's hard.
Yeah.
I've had enough of that with my siblings.
I mean, the reading ends when the reading ends, and I think another fantastic reminder. One of the things we also wanted to discuss was premonitions. So having premonitions, what they are, and how you can deal with them. I always love your perspective on them. So.
Well, in every class I've ever taught, I always ask a lot of questions. And one of them is I ask people to raise their hand if they've ever had a premonition. And what's interesting, when I ask people if they've ever had a hunch, almost everybody raises their hand, but not with premonitions. But most people, and you have to understand, this is just my opinion, you don't have to agree with me, but most people who responded said that for them premonitions were negative. It was like this ominous feeling that someone was going to die in their family. That wouldn't be so bad in my case. When you're your father's son, no, there's nothing. I don't mean any ill will against my father, but at some point they want to die and they're not.
Yeah.
But a premonition about world events. I just had this. It was an underlying premonition that I was going to go to King Soopers. For those of you not in Colorado, King Soopers is a grocery store. And I thought there was going to be some kind of violent event. So I decided to carry my pepper spray with me. That's all I did. I did eventually ask a few people, some of whom I know went to that same King Soopers, and she said she had been feeling the same thing. She was at that time a professional psychic. I knew another person who said, this is before, I didn't tell, they said, this one person said she had gotten the same feeling and she started carrying her gun because she had a permit to do that.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't that much, maybe a month or so afterwards. So that's a premonition is that a premonition or is that precognition? And I want to talk about that for a minute. But either way, there was somebody who pulled out, I think it was a rifle, and it's either that King Soopers that I went to or it was someone nearby. And so that's one important reason for developing your psychic abilities. I'm not saying you can protect yourself against everything, but it is one reason. But usually the premonitions come in the form of major world events.
Yeah.
And I would highly recommend you find one of the premonition websites where you can register them. I think, Lauren, you might put them up on your...
Yeah, I'll put them in the description.
Because it's great to have a premonition that something's going to happen, but if you never told anybody beforehand, you don't have a record of it, it's nice to be validated.
Yeah.
And I typically view premonitions as major things that usually affect communities, like that King Soopers grocery store, or that affect the larger world. And I look at, it's not something you intend to do. Premonitions just come. They wash over you, and usually there's a foreboding, a forewarning. It's you, for me anyway, and for the people who I usually ask in classes, it's that way. Now, other people in classes said, yeah, I had a premonition that my sister was going to get pregnant. If she didn't go looking for it. So that's one thing I look, precognition to me is you purposely go look at what's going to happen in the future. Premonition just comes to you. And it comes to people who aren't even into this stuff. I'm telling you, this stuff happens to everybody. We all know that.
Yeah.
And that's the way I differentiate it, but that's my differentiation. It doesn't mean everybody else has to agree with that. I remember when 9/11 happened, I had a dream. I think I told you that it was in May of 2001. And I tried my hardest to interpret that dream, and I couldn't figure it out. In the dream, there was a terrorist named Osama bin Laden. It's in my dream journal.
Yeah.
Had I Googled it, now back then I had to dial up. And people weren't Googling. I don't even know if Google existed then.
Yeah.
But I, when you Google things and you spell it wrong, they're good enough to give it to you the right way.
Yeah.
There were a series of underground caves that this terrorist named Osama bin Laden had. His side of it had this underground caves. There were twin beds, and there was a lot of work around the sheets for those twin beds. And when they were killed off, they got back up when the other people left. There's more to the dream than that. But I never knew what to do with it. And I know after working with my dreams for a really long time that if I don't understand it, I might understand it later. And I never picked it back. I usually review my dream journals a year later. And that's when I saw it, and I was shocked.
Yeah.
And so they were collecting people who had dreams or other premonitions about 9/11. We are all collectively connected. We are all connected to a super consciousness or collective unconscious, what Carl Jung calls it. We are always getting stuff about what's coming in the future. And if we can't get it in the daytime, we get it at night. So I think premonitions aren't necessarily something to act upon, because I don't know if that had happened 10 years later and I reported it, my God, I joke about it, I'd be in Guantanamo. I mean, look at me, I'm not too silly to be in Guantanamo, but you just never know.
Yeah.
I think everybody has premonitions. Not as many in the class did, but people who don't even believe in this stuff get premonitions. You've had premonitions, right, Lauren?
Yeah. And just you talking about it now has made me realize how much I've been getting them recently, like way more than normal.
Me too. I wonder if other people are. I would love to know.
Yeah.
I bet you that people who aren't even into this are getting it. I'm feeling energies around me during readings that weren't there before. I mean.
Yeah.
Really? Wow.
I mean, and it's hard because some people, I mean, you'll see everybody. They're like, oh, well, the Schumann resonance is off the scales, or we're upgrading to 5D, and those people kind of lose me. No offense, but everyone's got an explanation for it. My struggle though is knowing the difference between anxiety and premonition, because it's like, how much of this is just me? When, like, I'll say when Trump became president, my dreams were catastrophic. The world was blowing up in all of my dreams. And I do feel like some of those were just like my anxiety manifesting in the dream, so that I could understand what was going on emotionally. I felt like it was the end of the world, and so my dreams were kind of cluing me in on that in case I wasn't addressing it. But how much of that is literal? I don't know.
Well, and worry is not a premonition. I always like to say that. Yes. Worrying is not a premonition, because I worry more than the average person, I think. And I think you do it by experience. There's a quality. That's why I say premonition that comes to you is different than precognition that you go purposely look to read.
Yeah.
Okay. There is an energy about premonitions that just is different quality than worry or anxiety. About 3 or 4 years ago, I was overwhelmed by what I called impending doom. Now, I'm very political, so it's very easy to say it's politics, but it did not feel associated just with this country. And I after a while, I couldn't shake it. I couldn't figure out what it was about. So I contact my very psychic cousin. He's a few years older than me. He's incredible. He's actually, I write about his story in my workbook. He's the only name that I actually used his name. Even though everybody said I could use their name when I talked about stories, I didn't. I used his. His name is Jim. And he told me that I actually put in the title of the email, Impending Doom. And he said, Karen, I've been feeling the same thing.
Yeah.
Now, he thought it might be environmental. I felt like it was more like a war. And when the Ukraine war came, he asked me, do you think that's it? And I said, I don't think so. And then I called my other friend, and I said, so I've been feeling this. She says, it's interesting, Karen, I have too.
Yeah.
Do you know, to this day, we have yet to pinpoint what it is. I can still feel it, like it's up there on a shelf and back there, but it doesn't cover me like it did before.
Okay.
But it's still there, and I don't know. I mean, we can kind of see, you don't have to be psychic to know what potentially is coming. We may have a World War III.
Yeah.
But that could be what it was. I don't know. But
so
see,
you didn't figure out what it is kind of what you're saying.
I did.
Okay.
You can't, with premonitions, you always can't.
Okay.
I just know the quality of the energy feels more overwhelming, not about me.
Yeah.
Scary usually for me. That's just the way I view it. But I will say I did have students who feel like when they pick up that somebody's having a baby or getting married or whatever, they view that as premonition too, and that's fine.
Yeah. Sometimes you do have that like just really good feeling of something about to happen, but you don't quite know. So yeah, I think it can be definitely positive, but you're right, it tends to be more negative.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
You said that you've been having more kinds of premonitions or that kind of energy coming. Do you think it's the political situation? Do you feel like there's something happening on another level that doesn't really have anything to do with us little peons? But yeah, I'm just wondering why you're feeling that, because I think other people are too.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm also very political, and that surprises people because I tend to not share that as much,
Oh, I don't share it at all. I have Trump voters. I have people who have voted for Trump. And it's their choice. I have a family member who did the first 2 times. 3 times.
Same. Yeah, same.
Oh, yeah.
All 3 times. But on my personal stuff, you will find me very vocal about it. But yeah, so point being, like, I feel like my bias is so violently there. Like, I was sure Kamala was going to win. And so my bias totally affected my ability to read who was going to win. And I did not make any predictions publicly. I just kind of kept it to myself. But I would have been wrong, point being. But yeah, I've just been feeling it. And again, like, now I've got astrology in the mix, kind of influencing that bias. But astrology kind of says something big is going to happen. But I have been getting this sense of, like, I need to, like, connect to the larger energy. And that was actually the next question I had. It was, how do you, when we went to the Aspen program, it was just, you're going to read your partner in front of you, maybe 2 people, maybe the gallery. And I went to a gallery reading where you read everyone in the group. But it's like, what if you want to transition into, I want to connect and read all of the U.S. I want to read the whole world. How do you do that and do it ethically, but also like as accurately as possible? And should you, I guess?
Well, that's a good question. And I'm someone who says you go experiment and you'll find the answer. I find it interesting you bring this up. So it's so good to talk to our colleagues for this reason. Is that when I've been doing readings, I would say about, let's just say a month ago, I have noticed, so here I am, I'm on the phone, but let's say I'm facing you. Right up here to my right, up almost to the part of my ceiling, there had been a group of beings. Now, they're not spirit guides, they're not dead people that I would know. You can tell the difference. They're beings. In fact, I don't know if I ever told you or mentioned in the Aspen program that I started out in 1990 with this small group that we were just trying to develop our abilities, and we had people come to us and we would read them. But channeling was a really big deal in the 1980s. And so I asked if they minded if I tried to channel. And so I've had an experience I would never let someone come into me. There's some channels who do that, but not that person. But I remember feeling the energy coming in from this direction and feeling this presence with me. That's not exactly what I feel now, but it just happened while I was doing readings. And it was happening every time. And I knew at some point they aren't really here they did help me with the reading.
Yeah.
But that's not why they're here.
Interesting.
And the really weird thing happened. So in the 1980s, my Edgar Cayce study group got a reading from someone who channeled Orion, Orion, like Orion's belt. And she wrote a book. She was in Maryland at the time. And when I started feeling these beings, someone came to me who owns a company named Orion, and an acupuncturist is telling me how she connects her clients to Orion's belt. I'm like, what? So I want to go see if this person still, smells Orion. I have an appointment with her next week because I'm like, what is going on? These beings have helped me. They told me they would help me with the readings. And they do readings differently. They add something to it that's different than me, which is fine. But when you said that you too were feeling something, I'd have to believe that just because we're nuts and going through hell, and those poor Ukrainians are going through, they're going to die, more of them. It pains me to see that. It doesn't mean there aren't beings from other realms who just as much want to help us as all the beings and humans that don't, that want to create chaos and cruelty. And I wonder if maybe they're coming through to like you and me because we already do something that lets them in.
Yes, yeah.
What do you think?
I agree with you, and I've gotten so many full body chills so many times this whole episode as confirmation. Wow. That's usually what I get it as, and like it's funny too because ever since like November-ish, I've also been getting names of like beings, and I will look them up, and they tend to be very like star related, or like it'll pull up like a lot of the alien. Or like starseed stuff I don't quite know very well because I don't really gravitate towards that personally. Like I've literally had guides come through and just say that they're of the stars, and that might not be the same as what you're getting, but I definitely agree. There's something else.
Something different. Something different is happening, and so. It's so interesting you're having that experience too. Are you asking them anything? Are you like, why now? Why are you coming now?
To be honest, I kind of tuned it out, and this is a long story, but when I went on, like I chatted with you last podcast, I went on to the Lights Out podcast. They were a really, really big podcast, but they just happen to be here in Denver, and they do crime stuff and like stories. But occasionally they'll do kind of more spiritual, like paranormal stuff. So it's kind of more of a paranormal podcast. And they had me on and they asked me a lot of questions. And it was a really great conversation. But we got to a point where we talked about aliens. And they asked me if I thought aliens were real. And that was when I was just starting to get these messages. And so I was like, actually, I do think they're real. And I think I said too much. And I got a lot of like pushback for it, and a lot of people being like, all right, she's crazy, she's done. And so I think that little feedback with the alien stuff, it made me feel like I was crazy, and so I've kind of like shut it out of it.
You're not crazy. God, you live in one of the UFO capitals of the world.
I didn't know that.
Valley is full of them. I don't know how anybody can say that we aren't being visited. Now, are they going to land their ship on the White House lawn, or do they come from different realms? Are they beings that shapeshift? And there have been people who have my people come back from the British Isles. Some of them. I'm also German. They have long talked about beings that shifted from other realms into their realm. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I think more people believe we're being visited than not.
Yeah.
I think actually you're more credible believing in UFOs than you are psychics.
Yeah, I know, right? And I haven't really answered your question, but the thing I do feel about it is that AI and astrology are somehow related to it. I'm not
Really?
saying that like it
Huh.
feeds in or something, but I have been getting that very strong. There's something going on here. They're connected
Mm,
somehow. So that's
interesting.
where I'm kind of diving into more. I feel like I don't know. I
Wow.
feel like astrology is a way that they're leaving us messages.
Messages,
I'm like, how
really?
much do I want to say? Yeah,
No, you can tell me. Well, I know it's a
yeah,
podcast where it's not just you and me talking
yeah,
here.
yeah,
Let me add something to it. Alex
yeah.
Miller, Alex, Guy Miller,
Uh,
he has a website on asteroids.
mm-hmm.
So he is reading other kinds of bodies besides, in addition, he's an astrologer.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fascinating way he looks at asteroids that are named, by the way. Asteroids have names.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
he talks, well, I didn't know that. See, you're an astrologer, you would know it, I didn't.
Oh,
I think it's Alex Miller. And it's fascinating to look at how the whole thing going on with our politics, he will pull out the names of the people and they had their asteroids connected to them. It's just weird.
it's. I could talk to you for
And let's
hours about
face
that.
it, Lauren, if you
Yeah,
go back to all these ancient cultures, they were communicating. They were astrologers. I mean, you go into
yeah,
cathedrals in England and you look on the floors, they're the houses, the horoscope houses.
yeah.
I mean, there's been a long tradition of connecting with the stars, of prophecies coming that way.
Yeah,
I mean, Native Americans have talked about communicating with beings in the sky. You
yeah,
know, I think maybe we're coming around to a point where we have to finally get it that we aren't the only ones here, and that please come help us. We need
yeah.
help.
Please,
Because
someone
don't you
save
feel
us.
people are feeling overwhelmed. I'm like,
Oh,
I feel
yeah.
overwhelmed at times when I see what's happening.
Same.
I mean, I know
It's
people
scary.
losing jobs. It's just
Yeah,
horrible. It's
yeah.
horrible. Anyway, we could
No,
talk about
I
that forever.
same.
But and maybe there's a reason you got into astrology because as far as I remember, you weren't into that when I was living in Colorado. Yeah.
No, I only just I got into it during my Saturn return, which is like the
Oh,
quintessential like rough period. When
yeah,
Saturn
yeah,
returns to where it
yeah,
was when you were born, it's usually like, okay, coming in to
yeah,
teach you some hard lessons. And
yeah.
of course I found it there and I've been studying it and just really getting
Wow.
into it. But, for those who are new, maybe listeners, new to me,
Mhm.
I just did a podcast about the 2025 astrology. We just happen to be in a year that is hugely consequential. Like
Right.
astrologers from decades, centuries ago looked at this year. They also looked at
Really?
2020, also saw pandemic.
Wow.
So it's been very interesting, and I'm very closely following it this year to see what comes true and what
Oh,
doesn't.
well, I need to
And
look at it's a podcast you did. I'm
yeah,
sure I got it. I
podcast.
just haven't gotten around to looking at it. I will look at
No
it. That
worries.
is so
Yeah.
cool.
It's very interesting, and I think to your
Yeah.
point, like it I I've heard astrology more described as not predictions. It's not predicting the future like it can be. It's
Mhm.
more about past pattern recognition. It's literally just okay when these planets, asteroids were here. This is what was going on here, and we just collect. We record, and we notice patterns, and it's just
And
looking at
you
those
can
patterns.
extrapolate and see the pattern coming.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because you asked me about AI before, and I'm like, yeah, if I had now, not everybody has an internet presence, but if
Yeah.
you do, what you post, what you like, what you dislike, what you comment on, what you search, what you click on, all that stuff. If AI has the ability to go collect all of that, yeah,
Yeah.
they probably could read a person. And
Mm.
I've been thinking about that since you made a comment about it, and I'm like, yeah, but there's probably something missing. First, I am not everything that I post online. Now,
Yeah.
maybe you'd get AI that would come read my journals. You'll get a little bit more about
Yeah.
me. But even my journals,
Yeah.
that's usually about stuff I'm struggling with. If it usually it's positive, that isn't in there. I might just say some positive thing happened, but I remember one time many, many years ago, someone just said they assumed that she was signing up for a reading, I gave her a reading, and she just
Hmm.
assumed that I was going to search her on the internet.
Oh yeah.
And I,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I said, well, first, let me tell you, number one, you are not all of who you are on the internet.
Mm.
So even if you think you can read somebody by finding the person, if you can find them on the internet, you're more than that. And
Yeah.
there's something I don't think even AI can get, I hope not, that would be something more profound and deeper about an individual. Like, I still think it could be reflected in what's on the internet, but there's still some piece that isn't. And the other
Yes.
thing
Yeah.
which I told her, I wouldn't do it because I'm too selfish. And I said, because I want my ability to stay strong. And it
Mm.
gets weakened if that's why I tell people don't read your friends. First, you screw up your relationships if you do that. But you weaken your ability if you get a tidbit of information. It's
Yeah.
better to be wrong. We learn in any field if we're willing to be wrong and fall on our faces and we're willing to learn from it, we get stronger. I don't learn anything by trying to prove to somebody I'm a perfect psychic because I looked them up on the internet. In
Yeah.
fact, I remember one time when I thought I needed pictures to read someone and I had someone send me a picture. She gave me a picture of her in front of Machu Picchu.
Mm.
Really? You just told me something about yourself. Don't do that.
Oh, yeah, I
In
see.
fact, I prefer if someone's email me, they don't email me their whole signature block from where they work. I don't want to know anything about you. I
Mm.
want I want to I want to challenge myself, and like I say, if I'm wrong, I don't charge you.
Yeah.
I've always done that. And as long as you're willing to be wrong, you'll learn.
Yeah.
But I don't think AI can get every piece of who we are. You're more into that realm than I am because you're younger.
Yeah.
Do
I
you
mean,
think
I
AI can do that?
I agree cuz yeah, you don't
Okay.
if I gave it my journals only, it would find me to be a much more pessimistic,
Or
depressed person.
troubled person.
Yes. um
Yeah.
but I mean, it's it definitely knows a lot about you, but again, that's
Yeah.
how much are you willing to
Yeah.
give up, and then who's gonna buy that information
Yeah.
adds a whole nother aspect to it. I
Yeah.
mean, and I jumped on and I talked to my AI actually before we
Really?
started about this
Oh,
question. My
wow.
husband is also now he's shifted into AI. He's still in video, but he's doing like not AI video, but like protecting people's identity from being taken by AI, and specifically
Wow.
actors and all of that. So
Mm.
he knows a lot about it. He even wrote a
Wow.
white paper on it recently.
Wow.
It's
That's
crazy how he fell into it. But
fascinating.
the AI told me, and I'm just looking at it here, and this is, again, I actually want to make a video about this, but I asked it, hey, do you think you can replace a psychic? And it said, no, AI can't replace a psychic. Longer answer, AI can analyze data patterns, recognize language cues, and even predict outcomes based on probability, but that's not the same as intuition. It can't tap into the unseen, the emotional resonance, or the deeper spiritual connection that a psychic can. And when I asked it to like
Wow.
elaborate on that, it says I can analyze words, tones, facial expressions, but I can't feel energy.
Wow. Isn't
Let's
that
see.
interesting?
What did it say? AI
Wow.
can't channel spirit guides, ancestors, or higher consciousness. It doesn't have an inner knowing or gut feelings. It only processes patterns.
But you know what, Lauren?
Yeah.
If it could read, well, it could read that my mother died on a specific date. Now, it's not going to read much more than that because my mother was 93 when she died. She didn't have an internet presence.
Yeah.
But someone could go and say, I know in 2018 you were going through grief over the loss of your mother. AI could do that.
Yep. Yep. Yeah.
A psychic can do that. I mean, so you've left me with a quandary. I do think AI could do, and I think they can extrapolate. If you have enough information, you can project the tendency of where a person might be headed.
Yeah.
I mean, that's sort of what I do. I don't believe that fate is written down somewhere, even in the Akashic records. I don't think it says a year from now, this is what's going to happen to you and me. That's just my own personal belief. Other people don't believe that. They think we come with a plan.
Okay. Yeah.
I think, I don't really know if I believe that.
Yeah.
But I do think AI could do a lot to comfort people about that. could
Yeah.
remind people of the struggles they've gone through, but I don't think they can go deeper. But it's interesting you asked that question of AI.
I know, it's so
Wow.
cool. I've asked it so many
Wow.
cool things. Like it's great because as I've been studying astrology, it has access to astrology, so I can tell it to quiz me. I can tell it to
Wow.
give me example pretend people to read and like correct me, and I'll be like, wait, I forget what
Wow.
Saturn is. Tell me what Saturn's about. Sometimes the information is wrong because it's getting it from the internet, but
Wow.
for the most part, it's been a very helpful tool. But yeah, I agree with it in that it's still like it
Wow.
might be able to say, your mother passed when she passed, but can you tell me what she says right now? I don't think
Yeah.
it has. I mean,
Yeah.
it can make guesses. It can make guesses of what you would want to hear, and
And
maybe
unless you get my
that's
journal, you're not going to know the problem she and I had. You
exactly,
know?
yeah. So
Yeah.
I don't think it
Wow.
can fill that. And I asked it at the end, well, so what do you recommend? And it said it recommended to psychics to really differentiate yourself from AI. What do you provide that AI doesn't provide?
Oh,
And again, I'd
nice.
love to. I'll cover that more when I do a video about it because I.
Wow.
I do think it's an important thing that we psychics have to be kind of aware of. And,
Yeah.
they're not to get down a whole rabbit hole, but somebody made AI Jesus, I think in Spain. They
Really?
gave it the Bible and said, you are Jesus. You talk to your followers. And I think
Wow.
they set up a video of him and people could go into like confessional style. I'll have to send it to you. Maybe I'll put it in the
Seriously?
show link too. And people
Wow.
would talk to him and it's an AI, but he's got the background of the knowledge, and it
Wow.
caused a huge controversy.
Oh,
Huge
wow. That
controversy.
is something else.
I know it makes you question,
Yeah.
in a
What's
way.
real? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like in a way he technically has the most true form of the Bible, and he doesn't have the bias of said
Wow.
pastor standing up here, but is he
Yeah.
really Jesus? So
Well, in the 1970s, there were all these books written about Earth changes, pole shifts, which were even scientists say we're going to have a pole shift, and that Edgar Casey even said we're going to go through this terrible time, and it's going to happen before we go into 1,000 years of peace. There are a lot of people, Nostradamus, Edgar Casey, tons of people
yeah,
who have said that's coming.
yeah,
And I want to know first, when the hell is it going to start? I want it to start in my lifetime. I don't think it is. And so you wonder, all these people have been saying this for a long time, that there is, and the reason the neurodivergent people I find so interesting is Casey predicted a new root race, ROOT, a new race. And now you could say that they're the autistics or the neurodivergents or whatever you want to call them.
uh-huh.
But it does fascinate me. There are some times, but I'm so glad you brought this up, Lauren, because there are times when I think something else is going on besides what we can see happening in our
Yeah,
politics. What is it? I can't
yeah,
put my feelings on it, but when I started feeling this group of beings that started out with one, and I could feel some behind him, and now they're like three, and they have a light blue color to them. I don't know who they are,
weird.
and I know how to find out, but I don't know. I've asked them, "Who are you?"
Yeah. Oh, and that reminds me too. I was gonna say you were talking about Orion's belt 2 nights ago. My son Atlas and I, we have a little fun kids telescope, but it's actually pretty powerful. We were looking at Venus because Venus is super bright right now. We were
Yeah.
looking at the moon, and I looked up and I saw Orion's belt very clearly. And I'm not very good at recognizing constellations. I know the planets, but I even went inside and told my husband, oh, I can see Orion's belt tonight. So the fact that you just like brought that up is
I,
just a
it's like when you
synchronicity.
buy a red car, all there are red cars, but this is just weird.
Yeah,
Because,
yeah,
it was the 1980s when I got a reading from Orion, and I was really surprised that, her name
yeah.
is Elizabeth, but she channels Orion, and I'm like, this is going to be fascinating. Now I'll have to tell you
Wow.
about it. This is
Yeah.
so cool.
This
Thank
is,
you for bringing that up, because I bet you
yeah.
that if other psychics were asked this question, they're like, oh yeah, they've been feeling something too. They've been sensing something. You're sensing something maybe from beings from other realms. That's
Yeah.
what's up there.
Well, and that's what's
I don't
hard
know.
is everyone that I see on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, everyone is feeling something, but they say that all the time. I've heard
Yeah,
that since the start of it. Something's gonna change, something's gonna change, and then that might not be relevant to you, or maybe something
yeah,
does change, and then you really resonate with it. And now everyone's saying something big's coming, and then it's like
yeah.
I see the end of it where it's so saturated, it's hard to know what
Yeah.
who's getting correct messages and what they are. I
Yeah.
don't know if that makes sense, but
Well, and I was just saying we can move on if you want. I remember
yeah,
asking my cousin recently, I said, so are you still feeling that impending doom? And he said,
yeah,
actually, I'm feeling that it's positive.
yeah,
I'm like, oh, really? So I was surprised by that.
yeah,
This is a guy who walked his whole life being super psychic, very much has synchronistic experiences. I mean, he's just an amazing person. It's just so I don't know, but something I do feel like something's going on, and maybe something always is going on, but I
yeah,
didn't know that about 2025. You're saying astrologers from centuries ago knew it was going to be
yeah.
a big deal?
Basically, to put the long and the short of it together, we have four outer planets, the ones that are further away. They don't change signs very often. They're moving into new signs this year, and some of those that hasn't happened. Like Pluto just moved into Aquarius. That doesn't happen. It like happens once every couple hundred years or something. I want to say like 144. I'll correct myself if I'm wrong, but and so those are all happening. They're also happening along with some other huge transits. It's actually all this month. This month is supposed to be the most
Wow.
intense, supposedly.
Wow.
But it's in April of 2026 we get this like basket shape transit, and we're getting a preview of it this year. We're getting a taste of that like basket. It's not fully formed, meaning the planet's aspect, and it creates a shape in the chart that looks like a
It's like a
basket.
basket.
And I can't remember it was a French astrologer. He basically said he sees it as like new world civilization, a really good thing, a really good turning
He
point.
sees it as good.
Yeah, but other astrologers are guessing opposite, and so that's why we got this like, I don't know, it could go either way, and that's why I'm really interested in following it now. And
Interesting.
I have a very interesting sense of calm this month. I've been very scared
Oh,
about it,
good.
but I feel that same good feeling right now. Like I feel like I need to just sit back and wait, and it'll all be better. Which,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know.
I sure
I
hope
could
so.
be wrong. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
did you have any recommendations of like, we any recommendations going into like if you did want to read the whole of the US or like any of these political events, any quick advice around that? I know we spoke
Yeah.
to it quite a bit, but
Well, I think I've done that in small groups that back in the day we met in person, and the group probably didn't have any more than 5 in it. You have to get people who are really engaged in it and really interested in it. And I don't know that everybody wants to commit to that, because I think there is, and I've done it more with another friend, but that's not the same thing as having a small group. And we purposely would tune in to what's going on in the world, mainly because it's another way, on one hand, it's another way to develop your psychic abilities. I mean, I used to do psychic fairs. Part of it was just because, well, they were doing that at ISIS and I had to do it with them. But
yeah.
part of it, it's a way to grow your abilities, because you have to learn to shut out all that noise and activity to read someone. That helps you get stronger. But I've always been curious about what's coming in the world. And so I found a few people who were interested too, but we never seemed to be able to stick to it. And part of it is, yes, it's very different than reading an individual. It's even different than doing a gallery reading. See, when I teach gallery readings, you're reading individuals, but you always have to pull back and feel the whole group first to know where to go next. But I began to find that there are themes that would emerge, that these people didn't just come together as individuals, that no, some level, we are herd animals. Ask the people at the post office. We come in herds. We don't, if we all came out individually, they wouldn't have long lines. And there's some reason this group came here today, and that would begin to emerge in a gallery reading, and I would start reading that theme, and that would pretty much touch everybody in the room. And you have to pull yourself back from the individual, or even from our political situation, and have a sense of the bigness of the world, or if you want to do it for a country. But I haven't done that in many years because I haven't found anyone who wants to sort of dedicate that with. I'd love to do that if you ever found anybody.
I was gonna say, we literally on Patreon, again, that private
Really?
membership, we have practice nights, and we kind of slowly started drifting towards, hey, we should do like a group channel instead of doing like, hey, one-on-one readings. And then there was one night we tried to predict what was going to happen in 2025. And let me tell you, it was messy, and it was confusing, and everyone was getting different messages, and I didn't know if that was me as a coach, maybe like not hurting this group very well, or if we were just, I don't know. So we've tried it a couple times as a group, and people tended to love it, and we want to do it again. We don't do it like every single month, but we occasionally do it. But again, it's virtual like this. But
I would suggest holding, spend time meditating, and someone guide it, so that you're at the point where you're holding and feeling, not just feeling, but holding the energy of the world. It may mean taking yourself out of it from the planet and feeling the wholeness of it. And it wouldn't hurt for the night or two before that you program your dreams to invite in these beings to help you understand what's going on in the world. And so the focus wouldn't be just on politics of America. It would be there's a world here. There have to be people in other dimensions that are part of what's going on, and it's like holding that energy would be a big part of reading it. And maybe the reason you're getting a bit of chaotic things here and there is because that's what it's going to be.
Yes, yeah. I didn't feel like anyone was getting anything wrong. I just felt like we were all picking up different things
all over the place.
Yeah.
But you know, it may just take doing it a few times before it finally pans out, and you know, you're getting through the clutter and you're actually able to hone in. Yeah. That's cool that you're doing that.
No, that's great advice. We might have to have you join us one of the nights.
I'd love to.
Because that might be helpful to just get some direction on how to do that. But yeah, I love that. I think I've got 2 more questions, and I'll kind of try to wrap it up here, because I know we're at our end of our time almost. And you kind of already spoke to this, and this comes from one of our guests, and I apologize, I did not write down who gave me this, but this is a quote from them. They said, "I'd be curious to hear the 2 of you speak about how to exude confidence as a reader. I'm offering readings and getting wonderful feedback about the accuracy of them, but I feel like I still struggle with the language and presentation of these messages because I'm still self-conscious."
Yeah, practice. You know, Malcolm Gladwell, see if I have that book here somewhere, wrote the book, I think it's called Genius, but he writes a lot of books. You know, we have this, he says it's a myth that geniuses are born and somehow they have something the rest of us don't. You know, when I was coming of age in the 1970s, I was interested in things psychics from the time I was like 15. And the way it was promoted is only some people are psychic. And the rest of them, well, they just have intuition, but they're not psychic. And what Malcolm Gladwell found, he talks about all different kinds. These are research studies. Now, he didn't do any studies as far as I know in psychics, but the studies show, like in musicians, for example, who end up being these world-class musicians, it's practice. It is practice. It is persistence. It is, you have to just keep doing it. And I probably spent, I don't know, the first 10 years of the second time. Now, you know, I wasn't interested in being a professional psychic the first 5-6 years of 1990s. So it didn't matter to me. I mean, it mattered to me that I could be wrong, but not the way it does when you're a professional. Yeah. And I would say first, don't be a professional until don't charge, which means don't be a professional until you're making a bunch of mistakes and learning from them. But it sounds like this person is already a professional. The thing of it is so you're human. You know, you just have to not feel confident and do it anyway, because that's the truth of any profession. And it will be over time, the more you do, the more regularly you do readings, the less you will question whether you're any good. And frankly, do not reach the day where you think that you're perfect, because you are not. And the reason I have grown over the years is because I am willing to learn from my mistakes, but also I don't question myself the way I used to be. I mean, you know, I read people on the phone. At least there was a time when the person was in front of me. And people think, the better readings are in person. I said, no, the better readings are on the phone. And I can't stand doing Zoom. I'm just saying, I can't have a person, I'm from the South, we're supposed to look at you. I cannot do that. I'm distracted. When I'm on the phone, I'm not reading body language. I'm not reading what you're wearing. I'm not reading anything. I'm I'm just purely going into the psychic realm and reading you. And talk about fear. My son used to say, when he went to work for a corporation, he said, Mom, I'm having meetings with people I've never met, and, we shake hands, and I all of a sudden know things about them I couldn't possibly know. Why do you think that is? I said, because you're psychic. He said, but I could never sit down and do what you do. I could never sit down with someone I've never met and read them. Well, it's practice. He could do it if he wanted to, but, he has other work he's doing. And I think the confidence comes with time, and don't let a lot of time come in between readings. There's some students I had I've always, when I taught, there were students who had far stronger abilities than I did, natural, innate abilities. It is what you do with it. And one person in particular, she just excelled. I had people call me and go on and on about how wonderful she was, and I knew she was good. And then she didn't do readings for several years. And then when I referred someone to her, not knowing she hadn't been doing readings, and the person called me back and said, she just asked me questions. What going through my program, you don't ask questions. You're the psychic, you do the reading. And so when you get out of practice, you lose your confidence that way. So keep doing readings, and you will get past it. At some point, I now feel like, I'm a psychic. I know you probably think, well, of course you are, Karen. No, I question myself too all the time. Well, and I don't do it anymore, but I did at least for 10 years. Yeah.
And I went through a real questioning recently, because I went on that podcast, and they have 500,000 followers, and so that many people did not watch it, but it was a lot of people. So I got a lot of negative feedback all at once, and I had to kind of stop looking at it. Lots of positive feedback as well, but of course it's the negative that sticks with you. And so I had to really pull myself out of the trenches as well. And to answer that question, I totally agree with Karen. Practice. Another little technique that's helped me, that I also learned from Karen, is to switch into making statements instead of asking questions. You said that, but that's where I notice when I'm not confident, I'll start asking questions more, and I'm like,
I do the same thing.
I gotta stop doing
that. I violate my own rule.
Exactly. Same. Yes. I feel like there was another one. The questions, and then
there's also a thing called faking it. Now, I'm not saying faking it to think you're more than what you really are, but you have to just go. I remember the first time I did a gallery reading. I did it because the owner of Isis Books asked me to do it, and I'm like, okay. I'd never done one. I started doing readings. I didn't get training. I just did a bunch of readings. And I'm sitting there in front of 30 people, 35 people. They are packed in that room in Isis. There's standing room only. And I'm and you just have to suck it up and do it. And that's what I did. I sucked it up and I did it. And it was a wonderful experience. But I don't know if you were in one of these. I've done gallery readings that fell flat. They were horrible. I was horrible. And I remember finally just saying, because there were some students and some professional psychics, I asked them, even if there weren't any, I would have said, is anybody getting anything on whatever? Because in professional, the famous mediums, I was told that they sometimes have to have people in the audience that they've already read and know about, because this is TV. TV is money. You don't get to sit there and hem and haw. And so they would have those people there just in case. You can't always be on. You can't always be good. You just and I find it's a relief to just admit I'm having a crappy day.
Yes,
So admitting that you're having a crappy day is part of building confidence. I guess that's
exactly. That reminds me, that's exactly what I was gonna say is at the beginning, when I tell people I can be wrong, in a way I'm lowering the expectation for them, but I'm also lowering the expectation for myself to be perfect. And I made a video of how to kind of release that need to be perfect, and how when you try to be perfect, it actually works against your ability. So
but you've got people out there making fun, giving you all that feedback from being on that podcast, and so it just brings up all that stuff about you have to be perfect. And it's people can be so mean about anything. So they're just being mean about that particular. Were they mad about your being a psychic, or you're bringing up the paranormal
everything?
UFOs?
I mean, everything. Again, everything. Somebody said I was being too flirty, which is oh my god,
too flirty. You have never
I'm
struck me as being flirty. Maybe they
yeah.
wanted you to be flirty.
I was going to say some of that's projection. I mean, I did try to read into the energy when
Wow.
I was way too nervous, and they didn't even
Yeah.
ask me to read, but I felt like I needed to prove it. So of
Yeah.
course I crash and burned.
Yeah. Oh
I
yeah.
mean, I definitely got a
You're
lot of
human.
right things, but
Hmm.
there was like just the teeny tiny things they would find, and then they would make a post on. So like just
Hmm.
my teeny tiny normal human
Yeah.
mistakes. It
Yeah.
was what I
Oh,
looked like,
that's
what I sounded
it's just
like,
wrong. That's
what I
about
read.
them.
Yeah, yeah.
That's all about them.
it
Yeah.
was it was good though for me because it's like
Hmm.
if I want to be public, I need to be able to take that criticism. And it was a
Hmm.
good learning experience to know how to respond to some of
Hmm.
that. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Good. Good for you. I'm glad you're doing this stuff, Lauren. I think
thank
it's
you.
wonderful.
Yeah,
You're the next generation of taking this work to a different level that my
yeah,
generation just didn't do. Yeah.
yeah.
Cool.
Absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate that. I think the last question, this is a question that I get a lot. Do you have any favorite books on psychic development? Obviously, I'm going to say get Karen's workbook. Any good books that you've come across? You've probably come across many, maybe.
Yeah, and I don't really read a lot of psychic development books anymore,
Yeah.
but there are other books that can help you develop them. And well, one I like first, any dream book will help you because if you're working on your dreams, that's your inner world. You can be more psychic if you're more any dream books by Robert Moss I'd recommend. He also wrote a book called I think it's called Sidewalk Oracles. Sidewalk Oracles. It is the coolest book. I mean, no one has written a book like that. And it'll really help you begin to see that we are constantly getting little messages. It has all of these interesting little exercises you can do, and they're all about developing the psychic sense.
Yeah.
I like the book for meditation called Spinal Breathing Pranayama, real
Okay.
thin book. I always tell people in my program to read that. It's about pulling the energy up your spine into your third eye. There is a book out there. It is by Samuel Sagan, Sagan, and it's called Awakening the Third Eye. And he has a lot of books. If you're really into science, if it is a bit tedious, it's a heavy book, but I wanted to do something different. I like to read things that are different. I also like to read things that are from like 50, 100 years ago. And so you can go there is a bookstore on Colorado Boulevard near 25. They changed the name of it. I forget the name of
Yeah,
it. Do you know what
yeah.
I'm talking about?
Why do I feel like it had Lotus in the name?
Lotus Metaphysical Bookstore, Lotus
Something like that.
Rising.
They actually
What
move locations, but yeah,
do they?
yeah.
Well, when I was there, which obviously was a long time ago, they have so many used books, like tons of used books on the topic of psychics, tarot, you name it. It is it's like a candy store for me. I loved it. You can go in there, find these old books, find books, autobiographies or biographies of psychics from the 20s and the 30s and the 40s. It's fascinating to read about these people's lives.
Yeah. It just provides such a different perspective. Even when I was doing my research around the Fox sisters, their approach was so unlike what we do today. And it
Yeah.
was so
Yeah,
helpful
it
to
is.
have that framing in a different way. Yeah.
Ben Affleck, the actor
Yeah,
Ben
yeah.
Affleck,
Yeah.
he was on Finding Your Roots, that PBS show where they're looking at your genealogy.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And they introduced him to an ancestor who was a great, I think grandfather-ish. I could have that wrong. He was into this whole spiritualism thing. He wrote a book. And
Interesting.
Ben Affleck he could just wanted to melt into the background. And I'm thinking, I'll
Really?
take him as my ancestor. And I got the book. And I was trying
Yeah.
to find it for this thing because I had to move around because we painted the house. I haven't been able to find the book, but you can find all kinds of fascinating books out there, like you say, from different time periods that talk about all this in different ways.
Yeah.
And it's just sort of cool to keep, But honestly, take classes, go to different people for readings, even go to classes with different people. But at some
Yeah.
point, make it your own and just practice.
Yeah.
Practice, persistence, and patience. The more you practice, the better you'll get at anything, including this.
100%. Totally
Yeah.
agree. And I will link those books that she mentioned down below. I'm gonna also have a video maybe coming up of some of the ones I recommend.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, one of them I can think of off the top of my head. Besides yours, I kind of like the Everyday Psychic. It was actually written by Karen
Lord.
that owns ISIS.
Oh, Karen Harrison.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
and she's actually writing a new one, and I didn't
Oh,
realize.
really? Oh, cool.
And I got in contact with a different company, and they were like, "Hey, do you want to review this book?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, how funny! I live
Oh, cool.
like 10 minutes from the store, and I know
Oh,
this
that's
person."
really neat. That's
But,
cool.
Yeah, so I'll kind of give my 2 cents in another video because I've come across quite a few too.
Yeah. There's a
awesome.
lot out there. Yeah.
There is, yeah. And a lot of ones that are very not helpful as well. So I'm gonna also give like
Yeah.
don't go to this one. Awesome. So thank you so much, Karen.
Thank you.
This was so much fun. I'm excited to get together again and talk more about some of the other topics.
Yeah.
Where can people find you leaving here?
And my website is Psychic IQ. That's the word psychic and I and Q.com. And you can find everything you want there. I have a contact form. You can always call, email, or you fill out the contact form and I'll get in touch with you.
Awesome.
That's me.
Cool. And yes, thank you all for listening. Be sure
Thank
to
you.
rate the podcast. Leave any questions for us. I think Spotify now, you can leave comments on
Oh, okay.
podcasts, which is great.
Cool.
Or if you're watching on YouTube or anywhere else. But yeah, guys, you can follow me. Know that I have private readings, coaching sessions as well. I know I've talked a crap ton about Patreon. Anyone is welcome to join at any level. I also have astrology services now available if you guys aren't following me everywhere. I'm now doing birth charts and astrocartography. Very excited to do that. But yeah, follow me on YouTube, Instagram. Also join my email newsletter for updates. But thank you all so much for listening, and thank you so much, Karen.
Well, thanks so much for inviting me, Lauren. I really love talking to you. It's great.